Did you know that whilst men still outnumber the amount of women who invest, more women than men are investing outside of their home and their superannuation each year? Women in general are more conservative with their investments than their male counterparts, and more women than men are stating that a lack of money is what is holding them back from investing more. Welcome to Dollars and Dreams, the podcast designed to empower you to take control of your personal and business finance. You know, the very thought of money and finance can often send chills down your spine and stir up fear of the unknown. But let's change that narrative together. Through this podcast, my goal is to not only to provide you with useful information, but also to inspire and motivate you to take action towards your own financial goals. Let's rewrite your money story together. Hello and welcome to today's episode of Dollars and Dreams. Today's episode is one that I find splits the community. They either love investing or they hate investing. But I think what we don't understand about investing is it is in our life anyway. So your superannuation that has been paid by your employer and or yourself is invested. You've got money in a bank account. You've got it invested. So investing isn't just into shares, although shares is a really important part of that. It can be investing into a rental property, investing into term deposits or bonds, or just even into a general everyday bank account. The process of investing in shares is very similar to the process of investing into a term deposit. You look at what rate you're going to get back, what the risk is, and things like that. So as I said, people either love it or they hate it. But part of growing your own financial wealth is you need to have some understanding. And I find that the fear that people have is investing is something that we're not taught. Investing is something that we hear, like the stockbrokers, and I can't even think of the name, Wolf of Wall Street. The shares went plummeting, everybody lost their money. Stockbrokers are jumping out of windows on Wall Street. And yes, that was a really traumatic time. It was a time in investing cycle that people had put money where they couldn't afford to lose. So there's some very basics of investing that you should know, and that doesn't mean you're going to be like the Wolf of Wall Street. You're not going to invest your house and business and everything into it. But as I said at the start, your superannuation is mostly probably invested in shares, because even if you have a balanced fund, there is some shares and some cash. So I'm not going to talk about this too much today, but when you're investing, there is growth or conservative investments. So a balanced has a bit of both. So getting your basic knowledge around what investing is and how it works is a really important part, even if you don't want to invest in your own name, but so that you can take control of the investing that happens inside your superannuation. So, of course, as we all know, women retire with significantly less superannuation than men, yet we have a longer life expectancy. There's lots of reasons that we have less in superannuation. Part of that is the gender pay gap. Part of it is that we have taken time out of the workforce to care for our children and or our elderly parents. Part of that is that women tend to work more in part-time roles, and part of that is that women tend to retire earlier than men, and that can be because they do need to care for elderly parents, and women predominantly still take on that caring role in society. It can also be that it's accepted norm that women will drop down to 2 or 3 days a week while men tend to keep the full-time roles. There's lots of things that you can do to balance up your super with your partner if he's working full-time and things like that. But again, that's not the topic of today. So we're going to talk today about investing. And I find when I start talking to people that so many women would rather swim with sharks than invest their money in the share market. There are some men that are fearful of it, but men tend to be a bit more bravo and I've got this, and they'll do stuff. I'm finding men in particular are more investing in crypto. I'm not a lover of crypto, so you'll never hear me talking too much about it. And that's because I don't like investing in something that I don't understand the mechanics of. I have no interest, so I don't want to educate myself. And you might say, but isn't that what you're telling us to do with shares? But that's very different. There's lots of safeguards. There's lots of reporting requirements. There's a lot more reasons that things happen on the share market than what happens in crypto. So primarily any investing is taking your funds and putting it somewhere that it will grow over time. So as I said at the start, even putting it into a bank account that earns interest is some form of investing. Putting it into a term deposit that is locked away for 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, whatever it is a form of investment. Investment can be in property, or it can be in shares, or it can be in what we call managed funds or even bonds. Today, I'm just going to talk about the process of investing and the very basics of what you need to understand. We definitely can't cover off on everything like what a risk profile is, what things you should be looking for, what platforms you should be looking at. There's just not enough time in a podcast, but if you want any of that, reach out to me at jenrichardson.co and I can help you. So let's debunk some of the myths that we hear. First myth that I want to debunk is investing is only for the wealthy. The second one I'm going to talk about is that investing is too risky, and then that you need to be an expert to make investments into the share market, and also that I don't have time to invest. So let's start with why investing is important. So as I said, investing is essentially putting your money to work for you, with the goal, of course, is to grow it over time. Nobody goes into any investment hoping it goes backwards. It does happen occasionally. You know, I did somebody's tax return yesterday, for example, that they invested in a company and the company went belly up, so they lost their money. And it is important to understand that there is a risk. There is a risk in any type of investment. So you might buy a rental property and people will tell you there's no risk there. But I've also got a client that bought a property that was very much in a mining town. That mining town closed down. Once it closed down and all the miners left, what do you think happened to the value of that property? Now, he can't even sell that, let alone get his money back. So there is still a risk with property. The risk is also with property that you might buy and you think it's in a rising market and it might stay stagnant. The risk that property prices goes backwards, admittedly, it doesn't happen too often, but there is still a risk. The same as it doesn't happen too often in the share market, but that risk is there. And then I'll have people that tell me that the easiest thing, just put it in the bank. There's no risk there. But of course, there is a risk in putting money into the bank, because if your interest rate doesn't match inflation, so inflation is the buying power of a dollar. You know, we hear everybody say, I used to be able to buy X for $100, now I've got to pay $120. That $20 increase is inflation risk. So if you put your money into a bank account or a term deposit and that interest rate doesn't match inflation, technically your money has gone backwards. So money in a bank account is not safe. Yes, you will pull out your $10,000 in a year's time and it's still $10,000. But if the buying power of $10,000 has decreased, so what you needed to, if you need $10,000 to buy something today and in 12 months' time you need an $11,000, your investment has gone backwards by $1,000. So don't think just because it is that same dollar value that you're safe, because you need $11,000 to buy the same thing that cost you $10,000. So therefore that buying power has diminished, and so has your investment. So investments, as I said, is buying assets like shares, bonds, real estate, or anything with an expectation that they will increase in value or generate income in the future. So you might buy shares and accept that it doesn't necessarily grow hugely, but it gives you a good dividend. So therefore you are making money out of it. And the idea with investing is to give you what we call a passive income stream. So a passive income is any income that you earn without you physically having to work for it. You'll hear people that'll say, I've been on holidays and I'm still making $10,000 a week. That's because they've set up some sort of passive income. If you are paying out, so if you go and you get an investment property and you have a loan, if you're not covering the cost of that loan initially, that investment is not a passive investment because it's not making money yet. The ultimate aim of investing into real estate is that the value will grow, and when you've paid off your loan, you will get a passive income in the form of the rental income. So investing is about letting your money sit idle in a savings account where it doesn't cover that cost of inflation. But instead of doing that, you're investing it into something that will outpace inflation. That is the aim of the game when it comes to investing, that your investment will grow in value more than inflation rate is. And whenever you've got that, that money is building your wealth. So, as I said, it is crucial that you invest if you can, because it will provide financial security. But not only provide financial security to you, it will give you independence. And everybody wants to be able to retire on their own term, change jobs when they want to change jobs, or leave a relationship when they're not happy. So investing will give you that path to follow. So if I can help you achieve long-term goals like buying a house, funding your children's education, or retiring comfortably, then that long-term investment has served you. It's the power of compounding. You know, we talk about that all the time, don't we, of the small bits instead of everybody wants the big kahuna money to put in. So if you're putting small amounts of money in regularly, that first one will earn interest. Then you earn interest on that first one plus the second one, and then it keeps growing. So the power of compounding will generate you additional income. So, you know, I always say to people, don't wait till you think you've got money aside. Put it in your budget to regularly invest. And that will make small differences now to your spending and your budgeting, but it will have a huge impact to what you live on when you're retiring or when you want to move out. There's lots of reasons that we invest, and it gives you that power to make decisions on your terms and the power to make decisions that you want to make for yourself. So investing isn't just for the wealthy. Small amounts regularly is the key to everything, and it gives you the chance to build your wealth. It gives you the chance to take control of your money and build a brighter future for yourself. Even if you're only putting your money into superannuation, that's still a form of investing. You're still giving it to somebody. And if you're really uncomfortable about investing in your own name, that's a good way to still build your wealth. The catch, of course, if you put money into superannuation, you can't get it out until you're 60 or until you meet a condition of release. So you need to be careful that you don't put everything into super if you've got a lot of years, because if you want to leave a relationship, you want to stop working, you may not be able to access that. But investing can build a brighter and more secure future for yourself. So as I said, investing isn't just for the wealthy. Once upon a time, you used to have a lot of money. You'd have to go to a stockbroker to buy the shares. But there's platforms now, and I'm not going to mention them here. It is part of what we do inside My Money Makeover. We'll talk about the different platforms. But that gives you the ability to only need really small amounts. Some of those platforms will let you start investing with only a couple of $100. So it's about putting your toe in the water and actually just starting. Get over the fear that you have. Put something in that you can do and then just start doing regular little drips into it. So it's not an exclusive club, investing in shares for the wealthy. It can be that you want to start very small. It can be that you don't want to pick a particular share yourself. So you can put your money into what we call managed funds or ETFs. And those investments is you just giving them the cash and they will pool your money with everybody else's money. And then the managers inside the fund will make the investments for you. So the key to success isn't about how much you have. It's about when you start. And the earlier you start, the better off you'll be because of that compounding interest that I talked about. So it will build your nest egg ready for when you need it. And it might be that you want to help your children. I bought shares for my kids when they were first born. I didn't ever really add to them. All I did was I bought a certain amount when they were born each. I bought 2 parcels, actually, one, and I set them aside so that I knew which one was for which, but you don't have to do that. So I just bought that and then I gave it to them for their 18th and their 21st birthday. So over those 18 and 21 years, that investment grew significantly because it was compounding. The dividends I had going back into reinvestment. If I lost that money, I didn't lose too much because I didn't put a huge amount in, but it meant that they had a little bit of a kickstart when they want to buy a house, which 2 of my 3 boys are saving for a house now. They have all actually then, once they started working, they invested shares because they could see what it did. So I want you to forget about the misconception that investing is only for the wealthy. It actually has more impact on lower incomes because it grows at a better rate than inflation mostly. If you want to look at other things, there's lots of other ways, but just look at touching the scope of what you're trying to do. So the basic principles of investing is when you invest, the rate of return that you should get on it, and we'll do the same thing that everybody says, past returns doesn't guarantee future returns. So that's what we call your principal or your initial investment. Then you start to earn income from that. So it will be in the form of dividends, distributions, interest, or whatever it is. And you can either take that money out to give you an extra source of income if you want, or you can reinvest it into the investment so that instead of starting with, let's say, $1,000 worth of shares or 1,000 shares, you've now got 1,010 shares. So you will get paid a return on 1,010 shares instead of just the 1,000. So that is an example. So let me just show you an example here that let's say you go and invest $1,000. You earn a 10% return in the first year. So in year 1, you invest that $100 interest, which will bring your total up to now $1,100. The next year, let's say that 10% stays the same, you'll then earn interest on $1,100, which is $110. If you reinvest that back in, your investment is now worth $1,210. So you can see that on that first $100 that you earned in year 1, you earned an extra $10 interest. So that is what we call compound interest. And you can imagine if that goes on and the 1,210 still does it, you'll earn 121. And I'm going to stop there because I can't keep adding that in my own head and concentrate. So remember, Investing is about giving you independence and security and shaping your financial future. So the second myth that I want to talk about is that investing is too risky. Now, there's different classes of investment. As I said, putting money in your bank account is still an investment. So don't think that just because you've parked your money in the bank that you're not taking any form of risky investment. It's, as I said at the start, the risk that your interest rate won't keep up with inflation. If you invest in different classes of shares, yes, there is more risk than others. So we have what we call blue chip. So they're the really big companies that are reasonably conservative. There is still a risk, but the risk is more around that you won't get the interest rate that you thought you would get. Rarely with blue chip investments will you lose your money. I mean, you're not going to see somebody like Woolworths go bankrupt. You're not going to see somebody like Apple go bankrupt. So the risk is that you don't get the return that you want. So you might look and think that I'm going to get, 10% a year. And you might only get 8% one year. Some years you might get 12%, and you might only get 3% another year. So that happens quite often, if you can imagine, in insurance companies. Because if we have a natural disaster, of course, insurance companies are paying out a lot more money than in a year where there's no natural disasters. So the year that they pay out a lot of money because of a natural disaster, the next year you might not get the investment return that you did the year that we had no natural disasters. That doesn't mean that an insurance company is going to go broke, because there's lots of rules and regulations around that. As I said, blue chip companies are ones that have lots of safety nets. They've got lots of money invested to keep the business going. If you want to take on speculative investments, so that's companies that are new to the market, new to a specific industry, or don't have enough capital behind them, yes, you will take a bigger risk. Generally, those companies will pay or say they're going to pay you more in dividends, and that's because the risk and return philosophy. So risk and return is the bigger risk you take, ideally the bigger return you should get. And when we talk about risk, we don't talk about losing your money. As I said, it's that you don't get the return that you're expecting, or that your investment may go backwards in more years than it should have. So depending on what industry and the type of shares that you're buying, there will be stages that investment will go backwards. No doubt about it. When the stock market drops or the share market drops for whatever reason, and we saw that in COVID, you can't fight the tide. So the whole share market will go back. Some will go back more than others. Others will have less of an impact. The share market is drilled into that there are every so many years you should have a negative one. It will always come back. Nobody has ever seen the whole share market collapse completely, except for it took a massive dive when we were talking about the Wolf of Wall Street era. But most shares in time will come back and come back higher than they were when it dipped. And I've got a great graph here in the office where it shows the ups and downs of the share market. And when you look at that graph, it starts here and then you'll see the ups and downs, but it'll end up here. So it shows that whilst you've got to ride the highs and lows, ultimately the investments are going to rise in time. So you need to forget that investing is too risky. There are some risks, yes. There are risks when you put your money into a bank account. Admittedly, in Australia here, we have a safety net, $200,000 investment in a bank. If a bank goes under, the government will guarantee it. But you've still got that risk that you won't keep up with inflation. The other myth that we hear all the time is that you need to be an expert to invest. And that is not the case, because there's things, as I said, like managed funds or ETFs, which is electronic traded funds. And what you do is you give them a pot of money, and they then take all that money together that they've got invested, and then the fund managers, as they're called, will go and invest. So they'll buy and sell as they see it. They're the experts in the back end of shares. They will be looking at the company reports. They'll be looking at who the chairman is, who the board are, what their directions. They do a lot of analysis. Yes, I hear people all the time saying that you invest in places you buy from. So if you buy from Apple, go invest in Apple. If you buy from Just Jeans, go invest in Just Jeans. If you buy wherever it is, go and invest in that company. That is not investing in a logical form. That's investing with your heart. And yes, their argument behind it is you understand what Coca-Cola does, so therefore you will know you're putting a good investment in. That is absolute baloney, because you and I, sitting on this side, don't know what Coca-Cola's next direction is. We don't know whether the chairman and the board have a good background. We don't even know who the chairman of the board is. Yes, you can go and get the annual reports and you can jump onto the stock exchange and find all these details out. But if it means nothing to you, it means nothing to you. You can go and invest in shares individually if you're confident. You can invest in the top line ones. So you might say, I'm going to buy the top 50 ASX companies because they've got a good track record. And that's not a bad philosophy. But you can do the same thing by going into an ETF, a managed fund, or something like that, where you don't have to be buying and selling, where you don't have to look at what happens and what creates the issues for you. Sometimes it's better just to think, I just want to touch into this market. So what I'm going to do is hand some money over to some experts. You may get more, you may get less, you may be much the same as if you do it yourself. But what you're doing is you're letting experts manage it for you. Sticking with your top line ETFs or your managed funds gives you the comfort that there's lots of money there, there's lots of structure in place, there's lots of reporting requirements, there's lots of due diligence done. So my first thoughts for you, if you have not touched investing, is either to put small amounts into your superannuation because the experts are there to invest, or look at putting it into something where it is managed for you. I'm certainly not going to give you any recommendations because that is what is called personal advice. You can jump onto somewhere that buys and sells. And there's plenty of those sites. Every bank has one. So Commonwealth Bank will have one. Your ANZ, your NAB and Westpac will have some sort of share buying facility. But there's a ton of them out there. You can get on there and you can go, I'm only going to buy Coca-Cola shares, or I only want to buy shares in Apple. So you can do that yourself, or you can go and have a look at these ETFs or managed funds and pick a fund that aligns with you. You can get these ETFs that is cash, but because they've got buying power, they're getting term deposits at better rates than you and I can get by walking into a branch. Even if you just want to invest in cash, that's an option, that you can get an ETF that is just term deposits and cash. You can get some that has a little bit of both. You can get some that's all shares. You can get some that's all property. And you can get some that might be just shares from overseas, not even in Australia. So have a look at that. Educate yourself. Do the research. If you need help, this Investing 101 will touch briefly on in my Money Makeover. Of course, my new one of that launches in January, and I'm actually going to do that one live. So it's not pre-recorded videos. It's meeting with me every week. We'll go through everything together. So the last myth that I want to touch on today that we hear all the time is I don't have time to invest. That's a myth because, as I said, if you want to do it yourself, yes, you should do all your due diligence on every company that you want to buy. If you don't want to have that time, you just set up a regular payment out of your savings account into a investment of some sort where they will manage it for you. So any of those share portfolio platforms where you get ETFs or they just pool your money together, and I've just talked about it, so I'm not going to go anything more into that. So take the myth out that you need lots of time to invest. If you set up regular payments, it doesn't have the impact on your budget as trying to find a big chunk to put in. It also means that you get access to what we call dollar cost average. So share prices go up and down on a daily basis. If you're trying to pick the market, you're not going to do it. Rarely are you going to do it. So you might see the share market falling and you think, I'm going to jump in and invest now, and it keeps falling. I know when COVID hit, for me, I knew that the share market would drop because I've got that experience. And so I was watching for it to drop, and nobody knows where the bottom is. So I was watching it, and from my point of view, I always take the approach that I would rather buy it when it starts its way up than try to buy it and it's still going down, because we just don't know how far it's going to go down. So for me, what I did was I just watched, and I would just look each night and it would be going down, and then it sort of went up and dropped back down again, and then went up and dropped back down again. And I thought, we're getting to a place that it probably is close to the bottom. And so I jumped in there and bought some shares. Now, I bought certain shares that I wanted because I knew enough about them to know that that was going to be a good growth platform. And so I did. And I have had really good growth with that couple of particular shares. But I also bought into ETFs because I like ETFs. I'm a busy woman. I run a financial services practice here. I've got the digital platform stuff that I'm doing. I don't have time to be looking to see whether the share market's up or down. I just don't. My brother jumps on and he looks at his shares every single morning. So he makes a coffee, goes straight to his computer, and he looks at his shares. I don't have time to do that. I have no interest in doing that. So I bought some individual shares because I knew when they dropped that they would go up to a significant price rise. But I did that when COVID was on. All my other investing since then is in ETFs because I don't want to have to be looking at buying and selling. So that is hopefully enough to get rid of the myths that you hear all the time. So remember, the first one is you have to be wealthy, and that's not the case. It's small amounts makes big differences. That investing is too risky, and again, that's not the case if you take action into something that is not deemed risky. There is risk in everything, as I said, but it's about you making an informed decision. You need to be an expert to invest, and you don't. You've got to give your money to the experts to invest for you, and you don't have the time to invest. And of course, that's not the case if all you're doing is transferring money. So that would be no different to you transferring money to a term deposit. You've put the money across and you've got there. My last thing that I want to give you, and this is not a myth, this is just something that I see quite often, and it's something that I used to hear my mum say all the time, is the share market's dropping, let's jump out. You need to be brave where everybody else isn't. So when the share market is coming down, you need to take comfort that it will come back up at some point in time. Our world economy relies on it. We cannot have a share market that doesn't exist, or we don't have a business world. You need to be brave and turn off the noise that you will hear about the share markets dropping, and you need to be able to be confident to sell at the height of the market. The only thing that will guarantee you to lose your money is if you sell when shares drop. And there will be periods or years where the share market ends up lower than where it started. There is going to be those times. You've just got to remind yourself that that is just a blip and it will come back up. So be brave where everybody else is fearful. So when everybody else is getting scared, that's the time that if you've got any money and the share market's dropping, to jump in, because it will come back up at some point. And you'll see that in your superannuation. Like, I have people say to me, my superannuation went backwards. And it didn't necessarily go backwards. It's a measurement of time from the 1st of January one year to the 31st of December the same year. If you'd looked at it the 1st of January and maybe the 30th of April, your share market your superannuation might have gone up. So remember, looking at a price is a snapshot in time. You need to look at the big picture and be brave. Listen to your head, not your heart. Share market, any sort of investing will come back up. So I won't cover it off in today's because it's getting a fair bit into this podcast, but I'm going to go through in the next couple of weeks of the 4 types of risks that we face when we're investing, so that we can understand those things around risk. So that's it for today. I'm sorry it has gone a little bit longer, but I am passionate, particularly for women, to get into investing into the share market in some form to grow their wealth and to give them independence and empowerment. If you have any questions, reach out to me. As I said, in my Money Makeover course that's coming in January, we do a module on investing. So if that's something that you want to know, come join our wait list and join me inside my Money Makeover, and you can tap into my brain, ask me all the questions that you might have. Keep an eye out for a podcast coming up very soon on the 4 different types of risk that we have with all investments. So have a great week, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye for now. Remember, the advice shared in Dollars and Dreams is general in nature, and it does not consider your own personal circumstances. Dollars and Dreams is for educational purposes only and should not be relied upon to make investment or financial decisions. If you need more help, please reach out to a financial advisor for tailored personal advice. Don't forget to click that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future content. And please leave me a review. Your feedback really helps me to reach other people chasing their money dreams. You can find me over on Facebook and Instagram to connect with me. You will find the link in the bio, or head over to my website at jenrichardson.co, where you will find free content and learning tools.